What's up, good people? My name is AJ and you are watching Straight Talks. Today's video is going to be a bit of a tips and tricks to hopefully help out any CFP exam takers out there on the estate planning section for the CFP exam. This is a unique section in my opinion because the information included in the estate planning section of the CFP material is far more detailed than all the other information in the CFP program, and also far more detailed than any financial advisor would probably actually ever need to know. Because of that, I don't think that completely understanding everything listed in the estate planning material in the CFP program is actually all that necessary for a financial planner. To be totally honest with you, in practice, whenever you're having these estate planning conversations with a client, if things begin to get detailed and the client starts asking about some of the differences between complicated types of trusts, I'm just going to stop the conversation right there and let them know that I'm not licensed to give legal advice and that I'm happy to set up a three-way meeting between themselves, me, and their attorney to answer some of those questions that they have. So then, for the purposes of the CFP exam, I don't think you need to spend as much time on the estate planning section as a lot of people might. This video then is my recommendation on how to pass the estate planning section on the CFP exam while not taking the easy way out, but being very efficient in the amount of time that you have to study for this section, rather than learning every detail of the entire material. Depending on how I title this video, it might be a little bit sarcastic because I don't think you can truly master the estate planning section in the CFP exam. Like I just mentioned, in the interest of efficiency of time, it's much easier to just teach yourself what you need to know to be able to pass the exam on the estate planning section. With what I just mentioned in efficiency of your use of time while studying for the CFP exam, there are much easier ways to teach yourself the important things that you need to know to be able to pass that section on the CFP exam without spending 2 years becoming a estate planning expert. Of course, this is how I passed the CFP exam, and specifically the estate planning section. This strategy might not work for every single person, but I do think it'll help you out and certainly make you more efficient than, again, learning it all. The number one tip that I can give is to make little acronyms for all the different types of trusts and estates that can come up and be tested on the exam. I just did this exam like 4 weeks ago and I've already forgotten probably most of them, but there's things like CRUT, CRAT, CRIT maybe, charitable remainder something trust, and there are several other acronyms that are used in the CFP program to talk about different business entities or different pass-throughs when selling a business, or different trusts that can exist that are all abbreviated by 3 to 5 letters. So especially for those, rather than learning all the intricate details of how the taxation and legislation and application of those estate plans happen, I just taught myself the 3 or 4 points that the CFP program seemed like they wanted me to know to be able to answer the exam questions correctly about each of those topics. And I use those acronyms to do it. Some of you may already have been using this little trick for long periods of time in tests you could have taken in high school or university or whatever. But rather than remembering CRAT as charitable remainder annuity trust, what it actually is, I think, change the letters up to something in your own head that make more sense to you and remind you of the types of provisions that trust might include. I want to give an example here, and don't hold me to the accuracy of this information because, again, I've forgotten some of this since taking the CFP exam, but I believe the CRUT trust, I just used the letter U in the middle there to remind myself that it's more helpful when the balance of an account is going up. So the U designates that this account is used for when things are going up, and then that generally led me to remind myself about the taxation of that type of trust, or when it could be best applied, I believe. And I was able to answer enough questions on the exam when you're presented with situations where it sounds like the value of an account may be going up. I said to myself, well, hey, I think this is when you're supposed to use the CRUT trust. And I don't know if I got them all right, but I got enough right to pass. That's probably not the perfect example. There are certainly other ones that I use, different acronyms that I've made up in my own head to remind myself of other things about those estate planning topics that the CFP exam cared about. I just can't remember them all right now. If you are studying for the CFP exam, you certainly know what I'm talking about. And if you're planning to study for the CFP exam in the future, just remember this as a general tip. That specific example won't be as important, but as a general tip, with all these acronyms that you're presented with in the estate planning section, I'm just saying learn 3 or 4 things about how each one of those acronyms are applied in practice, and that should be good enough for you to be able to pass the exam. The strategy, of course, is not perfect. So if you were someone who is really struggling in the other 5 or 6 sections of the CFP program, or if you just really want to get 100% on the exam, I don't know why you would, but if you did, what I'm telling you here today is not going to work at all, because it, again, is not going to teach you everything, and especially not going to help you in actually applying these estate planning principles in practice. because like I mentioned, I'm just going to refer those things out to an attorney. So don't take this advice as a be-all end-all for that section. I just think it's the quickest and easiest way to teach yourself enough about the estate planning section to pass the CFP exam. The logistics of studying for this section was the same for studying for all the other sections in the CFP exam for me, and I'll talk about those here. For the estate planning section, my study consisted of spending time reading through the Kaplan study notes that they put together in this comprehensive CFP review book that I was using to study from. I would go through those review notes, in this case through the estate planning section, and there were quiz questions, I think, throughout each quarter or so of that material. I would take these 10 question quizzes and then of course look at the questions that I got wrong, go back in the study notes as to why I may have gotten that specific question wrong, and then teach myself what I was doing wrong on that question. Then I think when I was done with the entire estate planning study notes and all those 4 quizzes, I went back and redid the questions on the quizzes that I had gotten wrong to make sure that I'd actually learned why I got those questions wrong in the first place. Even more beneficial than that practice, though, of going through those study notes is once you start to take a lot of practice questions and a couple practice exams. There's really no great advice I can give you all on completing these practice questions and practice exams other than do a lot of them, or at least as many as you can in the time that you have allotted to study for the CFP exam. Just like most other forms of learning, I think doing practice questions for the estate planning section of this test is the best way to really teach yourself and also cement into your brain what you already know about the material. I think I probably got in about 200 total practice questions between the Q bank that Kaplan offered me through the study package I had, as well as the 2 practice exams that I did from the CFP board. I was cutting it pretty close in being able to pass the CFP exam, I believe. I don't know that for sure. They just give you a pass-fail nowadays. But I would guess that my performance in the estate planning section was a little bit lower than my performance in some of the other sections. So you could certainly do more than the 200 or so practice questions that I did for this section and give yourself a better chance of passing the exam than you otherwise might. Unfortunately, in my opinion, this is the least interesting portion of the whole CFP program, so these practice questions are not necessarily fun to spend much time on, and certainly not fun if this is like where you're going to spend most of your efforts. But luckily it is a smaller chunk of the CFP weighting. I think it's like 10 or 15% of the exam, maybe slightly more than 15. You're really not going to have to spend 50% of your time in this section. Actually, that would realistically hurt your test score. That's a personal preference, of course. If you're someone who really enjoys estate planning strategies for individuals, then the estate planning section could be more interesting to you. And then of course you're going to have an easier time grinding out the 200 to 300, maybe more practice questions that I think you need to be doing to be able to set yourself up well to be able to pass. There's really not that much more to it than that, guys. Go through your study notes, take the quizzes, grind out a bunch of practice questions, but especially because there are so many acronyms that get used in the estate planning portion of the CFP program, teach yourself little tricks on changing the letters up to mean different things that help you remember when these estate planning strategies are used, or how they're taxed, or whatever else things you need to remember about them. If you do that, you'll be able to save yourself a lot of time in studying. This is a pretty quick study strategy, but hopefully also be able to give yourself enough knowledge to be able to pass that section and the entire CFP exam. Best of luck out there, everyone. I hope these tips help you out a little bit, and thanks for watching.